At the United Nations headquarters in New York, the atmosphere was tense, the chamber filled with diplomats who had gathered once again to address the war in Ukraine and its growing risks to Europe. On this occasion, it was Poland that took the floor, speaking not only for itself, but on behalf of a broad coalition of allies determined to send a clear and united message. The Polish envoy began with a sweeping introduction, one designed to show the scale of international support. In measured tones, he declared, "I'd like to read a statement on behalf of the governments of Albania, Andorra, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Canada, Croatia, Cyprus, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Georgia, Greece, Germany, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, the Republic of Moldova, Monaco, Norway, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Portugal, Romania, San Marino, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Ukraine, the United Kingdom, the United States of America, the delegation of the European Union, and my government, Poland." The deliberate recitation of countries served as more than protocol. It was a symbolic moment, one that underlined Poland's insistence that it was not standing alone in its alarm. The envoy wasted no time in outlining why this coalition had convened. He continued firmly, "We are here to express our grave concern and to draw the attention of the international community to yet another flagrant violation of international law and the Charter of the United Nations committed by the Russian Federation." The incident in question had taken place on the night of September 9th. As the envoy explained, Poland's sovereignty, and by extension NATO's borders, had been directly challenged. He stated, "Russian Federation, while attacking the territory of Ukraine on the night of September 9th, conducted 19 incursions of drone-type objects into Polish airspace. The drones, which posed a real threat to the civilian population, infrastructure and aviation safety, were preemptively neutralized." The words carried weight. This was not a minor incident. The envoy stressed the unprecedented nature of the event. For the first time since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion against Ukraine in 2022, Poland's territorial integrity and simultaneously NATO and EU airspace was violated on such an unprecedented and massive scale. This warning came against the backdrop of past incidents in which stray missiles and drones had already crossed into neighbouring territories. The envoy made clear that this was not an isolated occurrence. This outrageous incident was preceded by various Russian violations of airspaces in the past. Then came a historic admission: Poland had decided to take an unprecedented step. The envoy announced, "Therefore, Poland, for the first time in its history, has decided to request the convening of an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council, acting in the spirit of preventive diplomacy." This was more than a diplomatic gesture. It was, in Warsaw's eyes, a necessary measure to prevent a broader conflict. The statement continued, "The meeting was requested because Russia's reckless actions represent not only a breach of international law, but also a destabilizing escalation that brings the entire region closer to conflict than at any time in recent years. Every word was deliberate, meant to underline the seriousness of the provocation, and then came a sharp rebuke of Moscow's approach to international norms. Such a provocation is profoundly disrespectful toward the collective and tireless efforts of the international community to bring an end to the war and to restore peace and stability in accordance with international law." Acknowledging the session's organisers, the envoy added, "We thank the Republic of Korea presiding over the Council for convening this meeting." But the core of the message was a renewed demand to Moscow. The envoy read, "We take this opportunity to reiterate our call on the Russian Federation to immediately cease its war of aggression against Ukraine." And with unmistakable clarity, the envoy delivered the coalition's bottom line: escalation cannot and will not pave the way to peace. Only adherence to the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and peaceful settlement of disputes can create the conditions for just and lasting peace in Ukraine, Europe, and beyond. The speech concluded with a formal thank you, but the room remained heavy with tension. The message had been delivered. The war was no longer confined within Ukraine's borders. It had now touched NATO directly. Outside the chamber, questions quickly followed. Reporters pressed for clarity on how Poland and its allies interpreted the events. Pamela Falk of the US News and World Report posed the most direct question of the day: "How worried are you that this is a warning shot?" The Polish envoy answered with calm but firm words: It for sure constitutes the strongest provocation against any EU or NATO country so far in this conflict, and we are so happy that so many countries recognise this threat as much as Poland does. Thank you very much. That reply set the tone for what followed, a recognition that this was no longer about accidental overspill or technical errors. This was about intent. From the American side came an even sharper message. The United States no longer thinks this was a mistake. The statement was brief, but its implications were vast. For months, many Western governments had tried to balance deterrence with restraint, careful not to escalate tensions with Moscow. But the US acknowledgement that it no longer considered the drone incursions accidental suggested a turning point in Washington's assessment of Russian behaviour. The Polish envoy closed with a simple acknowledgement. Thank you. That was a good question. Yet the simplicity of those words belied the gravity of the moment. For NATO, for Europe, and for the world, the question was no longer whether Russia's provocations would test the alliance's resolve, but how far those tests might go. In broader context, the September 9th incident is part of a troubling pattern. Since the war's outbreak in 2022, fragments of missiles and drones have landed in neighbouring countries, including Romania and Moldova. In late 2022, a missile strike on Polish territory killed 2 civilians, sparking immediate fears of escalation. Though later investigations determined that the explosion was caused by a misfired Ukrainian air defence missile, the incident demonstrated how close Europe already stood to a wider war. This latest wave of incursions, however, appears to represent something different. With 19 drones entering Polish airspace in one night, the scale itself sent a message Poland and its allies interpreted as deliberate. For Warsaw, the stakes could not be higher. Poland borders Ukraine directly, and it has been one of Kiev's staunchest supporters since the war began, providing weapons, aid and refuge for millions of displaced Ukrainians. A direct attack on Polish territory would not only threaten its own citizens, but also test NATO's collective defence commitments under Article 5. By invoking the Security Council, Poland sought to frame the matter not just as a regional security issue, but as a question of international law and global peace. The hope was to force the world to reckon with the growing danger that the war might no longer remain contained. Diplomatic observers noted the deliberate breadth of the coalition statement. By including countries from Europe, Asia, Oceania and North America, Poland sought to show that this was not just a NATO concern, but a global one. The list included powers like Japan and South Korea, nations that understand the threat posed by aggression and disregard for borders. Still, the Security Council remains a divided body. Russia holds veto power, and China has often supported Moscow in procedural votes or abstained on resolutions critical of Russia's actions. That reality makes meaningful Council action unlikely, but the symbolism of Poland's move matters, especially when paired with the United States declaration that it no longer considers such incidents accidental. Looking ahead, NATO will face difficult choices. How should the alliance respond if such incursions continue? Does every drone crossing the border merit a military response, or would that risk escalation into direct confrontation with Russia? These are the questions haunting diplomats and military planners alike. For now, the message from Poland and its allies is firm but restrained. Russia must stop its provocations, respect international law, and end its war of aggression. Whether Moscow will heed that call remains uncertain. What is certain is that Poland has chosen not to remain silent. By calling the emergency session, by gathering dozens of allied voices, and by speaking with clarity at the Security Council, Warsaw has placed the burden back on the international community. And so the world is left with the sobering question: was the September 9th incident merely another provocation? Or was it, as some fear, a warning shot of something much larger to come? As one diplomat said after the meeting, escalation cannot bring peace. Only respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and peaceful resolution of disputes can create the foundation for a just and lasting order. Until then, Europe and the world waits anxiously, aware that the line between containment and catastrophe is now thinner than ever.